never really watched the Smurfs much back in the day, but you can't mistake the little blue creatures for anything else. They first appeared in Belgian comics in 1958, before eventually making their way to an animated series in the 80s with 259 episodes spanning 9 years. Today's game released in Europe in 1994, 5 years after the show ended, and the hype for the franchise had become subdued, at least in North America from what I can tell, and that might be why this one did not make it to North America, although a Game Boy version of the game did. So let's see what's up. The game's use of vivid colors struck me right away with this one. I got vibes of Kirby and Super Mario 3 and other high-quality NES games that came before, and the sprites are well animated. The walking and jumping animations are fluid, and there's plenty of detail to the backgrounds that flesh out the environs. Once you see past the shiny coat of paint the game has glossing its outer veneer, you quickly find that it's perhaps not as quality as it appears. The controls are stiff, and your character packs an unexpected amount of momentum for just a wee bitty guy. Hit detection on some platforms can be tricky to get the feel for, and your Smurf is very slippery, or at least some of the things he clings to are, like these Vaseline-coated vines. The Smurfs is composed of 10 acts, or stages, and each one takes place in a different environment. Once again, each looks distinct and well done, but the level design is really uninspired. Sure, this was probably developed with kids in mind, but so were tons of other more interesting games, so I'm not sure that's a good excuse in 1994. Every level is left-to-right platforming, or in some cases bird riding, and in other cases log riding, so there is some variety, but what it lacks in terms of a good time isn't made up for with these little variations. But yeah, you'll get your typical water level, your snow level, and the occasional bonus level where you'll float around on a bubble or trip over, or maybe trip on, mushrooms for points. While the level design is basic, the boss fights can be challenging. The boss fight with Azrael was particularly aggravating and not intuitive for me. Azrael is a fierce, leaping kitty cat that has no love for miniature blue men hanging around her swamp, and who could blame her? That's creepy. You're supposed to drop onto her head a few times, like you would expect if you've ever played a video game before, but man oh man, this one was tough. She's super fast, and you better have your slippery vine swamp grip ready for this battle. The game can start to feel cheap at times. Some enemies you can pounce on to defeat, others aren't a huge fan of that. I should say it starts to feel cheap pretty immediately. When you start the game, you get hit in the face with a freaking acorn. Seriously, as soon as you press start and the level begins, an acorn flies out of a nearby tree and smacks you right in the mouth. You have to be ready to dodge from the very onset of the game. Many of the game's levels begin immediately trying to catch you off guard like this. I expected this game to have more of a story to go along with it, but it doesn't really, aside from the very brief bit of story you get from the manual. It's just 10 different levels of going left to right in a few different ways. You do get 3 hearts, so you can take a few hits, and you get passwords to continue your journey if you need a break, and they're of the 4-letter variety, which is nice. As for music and sound design, it's decent. I wouldn't say there are any bangers here you'd throw on for leisure, but it's well done and it fits the Smurfs. One neat thing about this game is because it stayed in Europe, you get a choice of 4 different languages when you start the game, something I'm not aware of any other NES game having. You can choose between English, Spanish, French, and German. The Smurfs on the NES is a decent-looking but painfully average game that never made it to North America. If you are a Smurfs fan in North America, you can play the Game Boy game, and it's quite similar to the NES game, albeit a little more zoomed in, but as far as Game Boy games go, it's visually top-notch. It is generally well-regarded. Alright, well that does it for the Smurfs on the NES. Look out for swamp cats, and thanks for watching.